Welcome to Afterlife Experiences. If our content intrigues you, don't forget to show your support by giving this video a thumbs up and joining our community of subscribers. Now let's dive right into today's NDE experience. I was just 7, a small child living with my family in a cozy suburb outside Chicago. Life was mostly simple and happy. But about a year before, something happened that changed my world. I was told I had asthma. I didn't understand much about it then, just that sometimes it felt like the air I needed was locked away from me, and I'd be left gasping. My parents took me to the doctor often, where I started treatments called immunotherapy to help my body fight against things I was allergic to. Every visit, I learned something new about things that made my breathing worse, and every day was like a puzzle as we tried to piece together what I needed to avoid. One night, the asthma hit harder than usual. It was late, and my chest felt tight, like there was a huge weight pressing down on me. I reached for my inhaler, my little hand clutching it, hoping that magical puff of air would help. But this time, it didn't seem to work, not even a little. My mom gave me some medicine, something called prednisone, hoping it might ease my breathing, but that didn't help either. All night, I lay there, my little body working so hard to take just one more breath. My parents stayed up with me, watching me, worried and trying to comfort me. By the time morning came, I was so tired, so very tired and weak. My dad decided we had to go to the hospital. I remember him lifting me into his arms, holding me close and carrying me all the way to the car. I was too weak to walk. When we arrived at the hospital, everything was a blur. Nurses and doctors seemed to be moving so quickly. They put something in me that made me feel strange, like I was shaking from the inside, and I remember feeling so very cold. But then, after a few minutes, there was this warmth that spread through my chest, and I could finally breathe again. I felt relieved but also exhausted, like I'd been through a battle. They tried to keep me awake, asking me questions and checking on me, but I couldn't stay awake any longer. My eyes closed and I drifted off into a deep sleep. What I didn't know then was that my breathing had actually stopped. I might have even been close to death. I didn't understand it all, just that I had entered a strange, dreamlike place. At first it felt like time was passing slowly, then quickly, as if the usual rules didn't apply here. I started to feel like I was floating, and I looked down to see a child lying in a hospital bed, surrounded by doctors. It was nighttime, and everything felt both peaceful and a bit strange. I was confused, and a little part of me wondered who the child in the bed was. Then a deep feeling of calm washed over me, but I also felt an urge to wake up, to break free from this dream. Suddenly I was outside, back at home. I was standing by the sliding door near the kitchen, and through the glass, I saw my family sitting together, eating dinner. I was so happy to see them, but when I tried to open the door or call out, they didn't hear me or see me. It was as if I was invisible. I waved and called to them, but no one looked. I began to feel scared, wondering why they couldn't see me. I wandered around feeling lost and alone. Yet there was also this odd calmness, like I was both scared and okay at the same time. Then I started to meet other people. We were all in this huge, dark space together, like a big room without walls, without windows, just darkness stretching forever. As we wandered around, we talked and tried to figure out where we were and how we got there. It was like a mystery, and we were all part of it, trying to find answers together. Somewhere in the distance, I saw a faint light. I felt pulled toward it, like it was calling me. As I moved closer, I felt like I was drifting, and I looked back at the others, wishing I could bring them with me. When I got closer to the light, I felt something incredible, something so warm and loving that I can barely describe it. It was like I was surrounded by love, wrapped up in it, as if the light itself was hugging me. It felt like coming home after being away for a long time, like I was finally where I was meant to be. The feeling was so big, so strong, it made me feel safe and completely accepted just as I was. I wished everyone could feel this kind of love. In this place, time didn't feel real anymore. Minutes and hours didn't mean anything, and I had this strong feeling that there were others there with me. I couldn't see them clearly, but I felt connected to them, as if we all knew each other. I could sense them in a way I can't explain, and it was like we were speaking without words. They knew me, and I knew them, and I felt safe with them. I saw my life as if someone were playing a movie of it just for me, showing me moments from my past, even ones I'd forgotten. I could see each memory, each feeling, not just from my point of view, but from everyone else's too. It was humbling to see myself like that, to realize how my words and actions affected others. It taught me to be kind, to try and see things from others' eyes. I knew that someday I'd be back here, looking at all the choices I'd made, and it made me want to live in a way that would make me proud. As I drifted, I met someone, a kind, gentle presence that felt like a guide, a friend, who showed me things about my life. She wasn't talking to me the way people talk, but I could understand her perfectly. She told me I had a choice. I could come back to my life or start a new one. She said staying here would feel peaceful, but that going back would be tough and might feel lonely. She showed me moments from my future, like pieces of a puzzle, to help me decide. I saw challenges I would face and people I would meet, and I saw someone I loved deeply, a woman with long blonde hair. We were together, smiling, and I felt calm and happy with her. When I finally chose to return, it was like waking up from a deep sleep. I opened my eyes, and I was back in my hospital bed. The room was dark and I could feel the tubes in my mouth, but I knew I was home. I felt sad, wishing I could stay in that warm, loving place, but also glad to be back. A few days later, I was well enough to go home, and here's an expanded version of your script with more detail and emotional depth, written in simple language. These were moments in my life when I faced choices, important decisions that seemed to weigh heavily on my small shoulders. I felt as if I stood at a crossroads, unsure of which path was the best to take. It was a confusing time, filled with uncertainty. I remember feeling like the choices in front of me were limited, almost like I was waiting for a better chance to come along. Each time I found myself in one of these situations, a calmness would wash over me, whispering that whatever I chose, it felt right in my heart. At first, these feelings were shown to me like a movie playing on a big screen, yet it was more than just watching. I was really there, experiencing everything as if I were living it. I remember vividly being shown glimpses of my future career. I saw other people, smiling and full of hope, who had been in similar situations. Their energy was contagious, and they radiated positivity, making me feel inspired. As I looked deeper into my life, I saw my home and the community around me. It was a picture of small towns, friendly faces, and a cozy feeling that wrapped around me like a warm blanket. Reflecting on it now, I realize it's hard to put all of this into words. I've written about my near-death experience before, but it always feels incomplete, like there's more I want to share. In these visions, I was shown challenges I would have to face. I felt a strong sense that many of the choices I would encounter in this life were ones I had made myself before I even got here, along with others who cared about me. I believe my home, my asthma, and even the struggles I would face were all chosen to help me learn and grow in ways I could only understand later. Yet, at that moment, everything felt unclear and a little muddled, making it hard to describe. I remember being in a place that looked a lot like the Space Needle in Seattle, a tall tower that my parents had loved before I was born. It was a place filled with memories and warmth. I remember the moment I chose my parents, drawn to their kindness and loving personalities. I could feel their hearts, and I wanted to be part of their family. I remember waiting to come into this world, and it felt like waiting at an airport at night, a little lonely but full of excitement for the journey ahead. Throughout this experience, I asked my guide many questions, hoping to find clarity to help me make the right choice. Starting over in another life felt like a wild card, something completely new and uncertain. Even though I was shown the challenges I would face, my love for the people in my life was so strong. It made me want to stay and continue my journey here, despite the lingering thought that maybe starting fresh would be easier. I asked about the loneliness that sometimes crept into my heart. I wondered if I would ever find someone special to share my life with. In my mind, I saw a woman with long, flowing blonde hair. We were on a plane together, flying somewhere exciting. Looking at her, I felt a sense of peace and joy. As I gazed out the window, I saw a brilliant light breaking through the clouds, just like a beautiful sunrise. It was a sign of hope, a promise that everything would be okay. I don't know who this woman is, and I've tried many times to guess who she might be. But now, I've decided to stop trying to figure it out. I'm just going to wait and see what life brings me. When I returned to this world, I became acutely aware of my body's limitations. I felt the weight of the night pressing down around me. I was intubated, unable to talk or share what I had experienced. It was frustrating because the nurse couldn't hear the thoughts I was sending her, like they were lost in the air. I wanted to go back to that beautiful place, that home of love, but I knew deep down that I had made this choice, and this was where I was meant to be. After a few days in the hospital, I was finally well enough to go home. I remember stepping into my room, and sunlight poured through the window, filling the space with warmth. At that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of hope and happiness about the future. I was on a high filled with gratitude for being alive. About 3 or 4 years passed, and I was aware of my experience, but I didn't feel like I had changed much. One day, as I walked home from school with my childhood friend, he looked at me with surprise and asked, "What happened to you when you were away?" It was the first time someone had pointed out that I seemed different. He missed the old me, the carefree boy who laughed easily and was full of fun. I realized that I had become more serious and thoughtful, and it made me reflect on how I had grown. I've tried to talk about my experience with my family, close friends, and even girlfriends over the years. Their reactions taught me to keep it quiet. I guess it sounded too strange, too unbelievable. If I hadn't lived through it myself, I might find it hard to believe as well. So, I turned to writing, hoping that sharing my story would help someone else who might be grappling with their own near-death experience, or perhaps even offer comfort to those searching for answers. It wasn't until 30 years later that I met someone who embraced my story and listened without judgment. Our friendship grew strong, and we made it a point to visit each other at least once a year, even though we lived in different states. She passed away in 2016, and I remember dreaming of her the night she left this world. It was a joyful dream, like we were together again, sharing a beautiful moment that felt almost real. I can't quite explain it, but it felt good, like being back in that loving place. Now, I go to the occasional IANS meeting where people gather to share their experiences, and I spend as much time outside as I can. I find peace in nature, always looking toward the future with wonder, waiting, and hoping for what is yet to come.